I'm going to hand the show over to Sam. She's been an event partner and a wonderful coach. She's going to share her 2 cents on being at events. And then Kathy Myers, also from Heritage Christian, she's going to be kind of chiming in and supporting this discussion, as well as kind of talking about awards. So I'm going to hand the show over to them. There you go.
So one of the things that I have listed here first is to assign a team captain of the day. This is going to be my fourth year, I think, doing this. And every year we go back and forth on how we're going to do captains. In the past, we've always assigned a 7th and an 8th grader, so that the 8th grader mentors the 7th grader, which would step into the role the next year. But then the 7th graders kind of get a little too big for the britches, including my son. So all summer long, Mom, am I going to be a captain? Am I going to be a captain? I don't know. So we have talked about maybe just doing captains of the day, but every team, they have their container that has their bot in it and everything that they need to take with them to the competition, including a clipboard. And then I have, this is mine. Steve's is nicer than mine. I like his better because he has a little checklist to the side. But it's also in the shared drive. Did George say he shared that with everybody? Yes. Okay. I took a tour of the campus trying to find the buildings, so I was a little late. So I just have stuff up here to remind them that you need to find your alliance partners before each match. You need to practice driving with them. If they're not there, to leave them a note about meeting up. This is that time where you can talk about strategy with the other team before you go. And I don't get involved. If they want me there for moral support, I stand back, but I don't say, oh, but their robot can do this. Can yours do that? This is on them, especially for me with having middle schoolers. They need to learn to speak up for themselves and explain what their robot can do. So those are the things that I have them look at, and they go to the table, the pit tables, to meet up with them. But then we also have them list which team members are there today. You know, so there's always that kid that plays basketball every Saturday and may make it to one event the entire season. And then they put this in their notebooks after each meet, so that they have this information, and then they just list out who the drivers are. And we determine at least the first 4 drives before we go to an event, based off of additional things, and I'll go to that slide too.
One thing about, we've talked a little bit about alliances, and letting the kids work with the other team. You will, at some events, see the other team's parent step in and say, well, this is what our robot does. To me, it's perfectly okay for you as a coach to try to help that parent off to the side to let the kids make the decision about what their robots can do. If, as a coach, you see that going on and you can't control it yourself, talk to the event partner. Say, you know, this parent is overly involved with the kid's negotiation. Can you please talk to them and make sure that they're not... One thing that I've seen happen is a parent comes up and says, I want you to take your robot in the corner and we'll score all the points, like we've talked about before. Having the parent do that is way worse than having the kids agree on doing that. So if you see that as a coach, it's very important, I think, to either try to handle it yourself. If you're not comfortable, for whatever reason, talk to the event partner. They will take care of it to make sure that that parents or that person's not overly involved.
Yeah, if you are an event partner, and even if you're not an event partner, there are documents online that talk about different things that are going on at the event, and you'll see that there's almost a script for the event partner to start the day that, remember, this is for the kids, this is about the kids should be doing all of this. The elementary kids, depending on how little they are when they start, they may need more of the adult assistance. But for my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I am hands-off. I don't touch their robot. If they tell me there's something wrong with their controller or a motor, I will kind of coach them. Have you checked this? Have you checked that? But it's theirs. I'm not touching it. And they have to come up with their strategies. Now, Mitch was one of my 8th graders last year, and he was a big teddy bear. And if somebody else told him, well, I want you to do this and stay out of the way, you get that sometimes. You're like, okay, but I would have to pull him aside. But you do realize your robot could do this, and you can help out. But he was too afraid to stand up for his
Yeah,
robot.
training them, yeah, I think
Yes.
that's a big thing, is training the kids to realize they don't have to do what the other team tells them. They need to try to sell the robot, because kids are gonna say, my robot is awesome. I mean, I know kids on our team, we have it all under control. You don't have, and parents would come and say, oh, they told you to stand aside. I'm like, listen to them. Those are 8th grade children, they have a team, they don't have
They
to.
don't listen to us.
Right, they don't listen to me. And I think it's a big component of the robotics, learning to stand up for themselves, learning to sell what their robot can do, and working together. Say, why don't we work together? We'll do this and you do that. And if the other child is unwilling to bend from that, it's okay for you to teach your kids they don't have to do what they say.
But if I talk to my kids, I make sure it's not during that time in front of that alliance partner. I make sure I take them back to our pit table and I have that conversation with them as their coach, not reprimanding another team
Yeah, that's the other
for
thing.
their behavior.
If you see your kids aren't doing the negotiation, you don't want to step in and do it. You want to encourage the students, maybe you go to your students and say, well, ask them if they can get those hubs. You don't want to be the one to step in and say, can your team get those hubs? You want to let the kids do that, again, so that they grow up to be adults.
And this might be one of those tricky situations where you also have that parent hovering. So you as the coach need to determine how involved you want your parents to be with your teams. Do you guys, yes?
So that reminded me of a competition I was at last year, and I actually had a question about it, and it's been bothering me ever since. I actually talked to my husband about this other team. The parents were building what? Like it had broken or whatever.
You can go to the event
I
partner.
didn't know what
next-
to do.
Go to the event partner, because you will see that, you will see it. If you see parents and there's not a student there.
Yeah.
I mean, the students' hands were there too, but the parent was the one doing. I mean,
Yeah. Now,
It can be difficult because there are some cases where, under the pressure of, we have a match in 2 minutes, and, as a coach, I want to make sure that they get their robot on the field working. And, I push really hard to make sure that the kids are doing all this stuff. I myself try to make sure that I'm not touching the robot. Sometimes I'll say you need to put that piece right there.
Right, that's different though.
But again, they've put that piece there. If you see, we will see other parents doing that with the team, with the robot. Again, as the event partner, I'm very quick to step in and say, this is great. The kids need to be the one fixing the robot.
And all I would say is for state and at Worlds, we have a system in place that if you see that, you tell the event partner, they tell the judges, this is something you can share with all your parents, those judges most likely will not give an award to that team, and they are being penalized because of that adult.
Yep.
And so if they're between two teams, you're going to put a little star next to that parent touching robot. If they're between two teams, they're going to get knocked down because of that.
and that's how I explain it to my students too, is that, I see your frustration, however, we're going to follow the rules, but when it comes down to it, I don't want you to be penalized for something I've done or something our parents have done, and for you to lose out on the possibility of winning the Excellence Award or,
Yep.
whichever award they're hoping to get.
It happens, it sucks, we don't do it. That's, and I know it sounds like tattletale, but but vet partners will go and tell, at least I will.
Did that address what you were?
It did, and it's just, yeah.
It
It's
happens.
frustrating because I watched this team continue to go on and.
We've all been
it's a
frustrated by
state,
that.
I'm sitting here going, I see it in the newspaper, but I was with you, and I'm like, ugh. And maybe it was just that one time, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just.
No,
There were a lot of
probably
events
not.
that I was
No,
at.
right, I know, but I'm saying maybe, just that one.
Yeah. Yeah,
They'll
there are a
be
lot of
back
events
for
where you
rock
see
farm
it,
for the
but.
adult, probably eventually. Get electrocuted.
The biggest thing is for us to set an example for our teams, to make sure that sometimes we do have to step in with our own parents to say,
Yeah, it's hard when we have parents working as coaches, because I know we have to repeatedly say, you cannot be touching the robot, you cannot be touching the robot.
Or
And
creating the
that's way
program
they
for the
are
robot.
touching.
That's also something that the kids have to do. I mean, when it comes down to the judges, they look at the students' programs and the kids have to be able to explain how they came up, how they developed that program and how it functions. So the judges know if the kids haven't done the program or they haven't built the bot. Make sure your kids are polite. we try and make it a point that even if they've had an awful drive, that they turn to the other team and shake hands with the alliance partners and the judges, if they can remember to do that. So that's another thing, just to remember that I feel like I fell into robotics 4 years ago and I love it, but the reason why I've stayed with it is because we're really developing the whole child. It's not just about creating engineers for the future. We are really creating kids that can cooperate with others, and that to me is way more important than if they can build and drive a robot. Have a plan for your team. Time management is a big problem that I have at events because this year we're going up to 6 teams. You have 10, 15, how many teams do you have?
We had 12 last year between middle and elementary, and it is chaos.
Yeah. 5 teams last year was a lot, but I keep hoping that one of these days I will get an all-girls team that can work together. That's my hope. I keep thinking, all right, if I just add another team, then maybe an all-girls team. Instead of worrying about just queuing on time, at the start of the event, during the driver's meeting, everybody needs to go to it, but the event partner will cover how soon you need to be at the queuing table. So they may say, the event may be running ahead of schedule and we'd like you to be there 10 minutes ahead of time. So that's that schedule that I had for the students. That's where they would have their individual matches written down and then they would base it off of that. So don't just worry about queuing on time, but try to queue several minutes in advance. So that's very important.
What I usually do with that is we have the match number and the time that the match is scheduled for. And I tell the teams, it's really more important to watch the match number so that you know what match is currently going on, not the time, like she said. So they always know our next match is 61. And I'll look at the kids and say, well, what match are we on right now? I don't know. You need to know that. And that's one of the things to help them much more than the time, because there's no telling something just went bad and we're behind, or everything's going great, we're ahead of schedule.
Yep. And that's why I have the rule for no devices at the table unless it's for, giggling about that, do you have that issue too? No devices at the table unless it's for something to do with the robot, because they will get so lost in whatever game they're playing that they've lost track of what match number we're on, and that's when they're going to miss out. And you know, they can't just, the one person that needs to go to the restroom, go to the restroom. Like half the team goes to the restroom at the same time, and the other half's playing on their device, and they've missed a match. So we try and knock out the device issue at the table as well. Do you guys have any rules?
We have a huge problem with that, more in the high school than sometimes the younger kids.
I also want to add in the rule of no backpacks. I get so sick of tripping over the backpacks underneath the table.
Yes,
on
the
the
device,
table.
standing firm with that from the beginning will cause you a lot of less heartache later on,
Yeah.
because it is a huge problem.
Yeah, and there, you know, there's
Send an
always
email to the
the,
parents telling them absolutely no devices
yeah.
in the pit if it's not other than the laptop for programming.
And you get a lot of, well, I have to text my mom or my dad or what time it's going to be over. And I use Remind. So when we're getting close to the end of the event, I send out a note for Remind for all of my parents that say, hey, the drive to this event is 30 minutes or whatever it is. And I'll say, the event will wrap up about this time. I would like you to be here, you know, if it's gonna be over at 4:30, I would like you to be here at 4 o'clock. Because it's my Saturday too.
Well, and not everybody can do this, I understand, but because we have so many teams, we have a strict policy of this is not a drop-off event. That you absolutely, somebody has to be there. If it's not you, it has to be another parent who's not the coach that's responsible for your child, just simply because of that. We don't want.
And you get 100% participation from your parents?
That's questionable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. I had I had 3 third grade teams last year. And because the kids were so young, this year we'll have the 4th grade and 3rd grade, I required the parents to attend and it was an all-day thing. I mean, the parents were there all day, I realized that. But there is no way that just a few parents can watch that. We had 6 kids on the team. So 18 kids, just the legalities. What if some kid walked out the door and you didn't realize it,
So,
Yeah, I had 40 kids last year.
to that point, I know some of us have assistant coaches that help us, which is great. One thing I try to do is try to get someone in charge of each team, so if
I
you have
did that.
multiple.
I had a parent in charge of each team, but I still made all the other parents come.
And then you need to kind of tag team of, you're gonna have a parent that's gonna be responsible in the pit, you're gonna have a parent that's responsible in the stands and when you're doing the handoff, when they're going to the stands. And then you might also need a parent that's helping with the queuing part, walking on the queuing and off. I know it's hard to get one for all those.
But if they're all there anyway.
You need to take advantage of those parents, instead of just sitting spectating, getting them involved, but talking to them before. Before parents go to a competition, I bring them into school and talk to them on my expectations. So going back to the devices, kids aren't going to have their devices. But the expectation that I say is, and this is all mentors, and this is something you should do at the beginning of the year, going back to the adults touching robots, is I tell mentors, put your hands behind your back when you're at practice or in the pits, because you should not be touching the robot or laptop. They're not touching. They can be advising, giving suggestions, but you set those expectations with the adults before the competition, and then set expectations of what you need them to do, I think will help out. And yeah, there's no reason why. I know parents have other things going on, but if their kid had a baseball game, those kids should be, parents should be watching and supporting them at the baseball game. There's no
Especially
reason why they
elementary.
shouldn't be supporting them at robotics.
Middle school I get, elementary, third, fourth graders, you need parents there.
How many of you have your students sign a contract at the beginning of the year? Do any of you have your parents sign a contract? Okay, all right. So-
And this has been brought up a lot, and we'll talk about this in forming the team, but yeah, we might be able to find some contracts if you want to email them to me that you feel comfortable with, and I'll put them in the drive so that you guys can check them out. But we'll talk about that when we talk about forming the team. But realistic expectations, especially behavior at a competition, because some of these parents suck. They're rude, disrespectful, and they do that because they watch that at Little League games. That should not carry on to the robotics. We're trying to prevent a welcoming, fun environment. We shouldn't be screaming at anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues I have. We have over-involved parents that just kind of camp out in our pit.
Yeah.
And so was one of my questions is like, do you tell parents you're not allowed in the pit, it's for students?
That's something I'm gonna be a hard nose about this year because it's too much.
It
I
is. I
can't
was
manage
climbing over
48
siblings.
kids and all their parents.
I was climbing over siblings. I was climbing over, ooh, you're at Worlds. We live in Kentucky. We came to visit. And then they brought their chairs and they're sitting in our pit. And I'm like, what happened to our pit?
Yeah, it's really just the essential drive team. Those that are handling, touching the robot should really be in your pit. I know sometimes you need a home base, but that could be in the stands.
Yeah.
That's where that second coach that's in the stands monitoring that.
Okay.
Okay, so who should drive? We determine the number of practices that the students have to be at. If they don't come the 2 weeks before an event to a practice, they're not driving. Now, the frustrating part for me as a coach is that the parents are like, well, why would I give up my Saturday to be there? So they may not show up to the event knowing that their kid's not going to drive. So that'll be on you to determine how you would handle that. If they're skipping the event, I mean, they're on the team, they should be there. We're also flexible, knowing that kids that are in robotics are pretty involved with things like academic team or jazz band or whatever it is. We had several kids on cross country last year, and we just worked with those coaches and we talked about what worked for them, how often they needed to be there. So, we would practice until 4:30 every night. So if they were in jazz band, they would go until 3:15, and they still got in some time at those activities. So that's up to you. Just make sure that you're open with the other coaches of other teams that they may be on and be flexible with that. Determine the academic requirements. So we have a document in our school that talks about missing assignments. So we know, like every day the teachers have to fill in like their I can statement and tomorrow's homework and what's coming up. But there's also a document that goes out through Google Drive that tells us who has missing assignments. So I can quickly check that and determine if somebody's missing assignments, and then we have kind of like our homeroom, but it's called Pride, and that's where they can go back for reteach and things like that, and they can go and finish those assignments and get those turned in, and also their current grade. If they have a D or an F, we put them on probation. They can still come to practice, but they can't drive. And then behavioral referrals, but I don't think I had any of our kids last year with behavioral referrals, so that would determine if they were driving. Do you guys have any that works for you for how you determine who drives? Anything beyond that?
On your academic part, this was more of a, not a jerk move, but kids didn't like this, but it definitely helped, is my expectations was C or better in order to drive at a competition. And since we would travel, it would even be C or better to travel with the competition. It was we had to stay overnight. But if you did have a lower grade, you're required to still come to practice, but you have to do your homework in the corner and study whatever class. And the neat thing about that is if that's an essential teammate, what I saw is other students would then tutor that student, and then you've got a really kind of support system and kind of, I'm relying on you, you're our programmer, you can't help me, but you're in the room and you got to get your grades up. It's just, it goes back to why we do this. It's kind of a neat little thing that I've done that helps, because robotics attracts, and you've heard me say this if you're in my early intro classes, that it attracts the struggling academic students and the advanced students. You put them together, they can learn from one another. That's the beauty behind it.
The other thing I did not put on here, and I don't know why this popped in my head, but it drives me crazy when we show up and there's always like 3 or 4 kids that don't even have our team shirt on. And then they're up there driving. They're supposed to be representing our school and they're not even coming in our uniform. So I told them at the end of the season, if you're not wearing our B-Spot shirt, you're not going to drive. I mean, I always have extras, so I've been doing this long enough. It might not be the right color, but at least has our B-Spot on it, and I bring a bag of shirts with me. There's no reason why they can't wear a shirt and be a representative of our school. Yes?
I don't know if we'll talk about this later today or not, but what, like, beginning of the school year, you're getting ready to start your robotics team. Like, I have a couple kids from last year. It's time to get some more kids.
We will talk about that.
We will, okay.
We'll keep going. What's the question?
Well, it's just
Steve
like,
read your
how
mind.
do
I
you-
did not yet.
How do you,
We'll talk about building your team and how to organize the students.
and how do you, like, for example, last year I had 40 kids that like wanted to do it. Realistically, like, I can't take all 40. And so I like applied for a grant with our community foundation to like do a robotics camp, like so I can have like a team that travels and goes to competitions, but then I could have like a camp for other kids that want to come and learn about robotics and like do
Yep.
something. But so like my question is just how do you get from 40 to a smaller group?
I have an application process that they have to fill out, and then I also, so if they're incoming 6th graders, I send it to the coaches from before. If they've never done robotics, then they can find a teacher to fill it out. It's like just a checklist of, you know, how well they cooperate with others and things like that. But the first thing I do is I have a spreadsheet of all of the paperwork that they have to do, and if they don't have it turned in, their application goes in the recycling container, because I'm not, if they can't turn it in, I had 75 kids try out last year, we had 45. So I can't deal with somebody that can't get a piece of paper into me. And then we have a couple of days of tryouts, and I have different stations. Sometimes it's building things, problem solving, other times it's just teamwork activities. And then I put an 8th grader in charge that I've had on the team for a couple of years, and they have a checklist. They have a list of all the names, and they write down things that they see, and then that comes back to me, and I just rotate during tryouts. And that's the best way to do it. But, I mean, I can get rid of almost 30 of those names from not turning in paperwork. Yes.
Will you talk about
Seems
how
harsh, but that's what I have to do.
will you talk about later about how you run your tryouts and what's involved in that, or?
We will.
I can, yeah.
We'll talk about that when we're talking about building the team.
Okay.
And if not, write it down, remind us.
I can't remember, is this my slide?
Skills.
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
At the event, where should coaches be standing? And as they're doing the competition?
Do you guys ever stop moving?
as they're running. Yeah.
We sit in the stands and watch them. While they're on the field, you mean actually competing?
Yeah, because I have a problem with, like, I hear coaches coming up.
Yeah, no, they should be in the stands.
They should all be in the stands.
I mean, if they're elementary, you might stay close to
No,
them
it's
while
not.
they're in the thing, but if it's middle schoolers, those middle schoolers can get in line and get to the field. Nobody should be up there with them.
Okay.
Yeah, at Worlds, parents aren't, or coaches are not allowed with the teams.
Okay.
In the queue.
They'll basically, they go to the queue, and then the kids are on their own to take the robot to the field.
I don't even really go to the inspection table with my students unless there's an issue. Like they'll say, well, we measured before we left, and then they're saying that we didn't pass inspection. Oh, this is Steve's lovely little thing here. You want me to try to demonstrate this? He showed me once, listen if I can do this. So he said this is what they had at Worlds, and I didn't go with my kids to inspection at Worlds. They're middle schoolers. I sent them off.
So first of all, the robot, yeah, this is exactly what they had at Worlds this year. We have the plans for building one of these on the website in the documents. So you can build one of these at your school. So you have this. They'll slide the robot through this, so it has to be less than 11 inches wide, less than 15 inches tall when it starts. So if it slides through there, it's okay. It goes back against the wall. Then you should just be able to slide this down in front. Oh, that's it, you got it. And if this slides down without hitting the robot, then it's okay. If the robot, is too long and sticks out a little bit, it won't slide down. This robot's too long. Fairly simple, easy little thing to build. If you use this back at your school, make them run it through just before they go to the event to make sure that everything fits the way it should. If you use this as an event partner, there's going to be a little bit of problems with some teams because this back wall is actually included in the measurement. According to the rules, this back wall, which is 1 inch thick, the robot can overhang this wall, but there's this 3 inches down here that kind of has to come out of the back of the robot. So in some cases, the bottom back of the robot is 20 inches from the front, which means really the robot is too big. It's really hard to measure that, but according to the specs, it says this wall is part of the measurement. The robot has to be able to fit in this square, like we saw in the starting area. It has to be able to fit in there. It can overhang the wall. It can't go past the wall. So that's one little tricky thing. If the robot fits in this, if you set this up on the field just like this, again, I've got pictures on there that you can see. If you set it up and the robot fits in there, this one you can see is nowhere close to hitting anything. Totally fine on the height. When it goes up, well, we're not counting when it goes up, so that's okay. But
It's the starting position.
if it fits in there, then they're good. I would strongly recommend that one of your last practices before you go to a competition, that you measure all the robots. Every single tournament we have that I run, somebody shows up and the robot's too big. One of the hardest things to do as an event partner is tell those little girls that your robot's too wide. I know you've worked on it all season, but you're going to have to do something in the next 10 minutes to make this robot so that it fits in there.
It happened at state, it happens at Worlds. Yeah, you should be checking that throughout the season.
If you can run it through there, they can make the changes back at school where they have all the parts that they may need to rebuild something, as opposed to the tournament where they may not have brought all their parts.
Okay. So for skills, we have them run through with the minute timer. George was talking about that earlier about just practicing picking up a hub over and over again. But they should also practice a run with 5 teams last year and 6 teams this year. I just created an alliance list the day before, the last practice we have before an event, and we just run it like a mini event, like a scrimmage, and they have to keep track of their points with the alliance for the day, and then they have to run skills, who drove, which determines the first 4 drives that we do, the first 4 matches. And then after lunch, depending on how the day's going, then they fill that in. So we keep track of those points before we go, so they at least know where they will be at an event. And that should always be recorded in their notebook. I make them clean up 10 minutes before the end of practice so that they have time to write in their notebook. They should be doing it throughout practice, but that doesn't happen do you guys have them write throughout, or is it
You know,
Last
team
minute
by
judgment.
team, it kind of depends on the team. Some kids, we have some people who are all very into the notebook and all that, and then we have some teams that they basically have to force the kids to do it. So it's we don't necessarily do anything as a whole, like all the teams, each team is kind of different, but it is important.
now when it comes to, yes,
Is there a spot somewhere that tells us how will we judge on those notebooks?
Yes,
I-
I get that as my slide point.
We'll talk about that
Yeah,
during
you
the
can
awards.
Google,
Okay.
yeah, I'll talk to you, I have that in my head.
yeah, there's an awesome website that has all of these documents that event partners can use. And I printed the whole thing off last year before I ran my first event, and I was able to go through and look at all of that. So skills driving, it depends. Normally it's 3 is the maximum number of skills drives. There are some places that will allow the kids to drive as many times as they want because they have the skills field off to the side and run all day long. So I just tell our students that you need to drive as many times as possible because even if they've maxed out their points for the day, it's still practice, they're still out on the field. If the skills field is open, they might as well go do it. It's also a great opportunity for the kids that don't want to drive during a match because they're nervous to be up in front of a crowd. So I try and get them to drive at least that point because it's an all-day event. It's a Saturday, and when the parents are showing up, the parents get upset with you if their kid never drives. So if they're only going to drive for skills, I tell them, you need to go invite your parents over to watch you drive because even the skills points are part of the event, and they can come over and be spectators while they're driving for skills.
I'll just kind of key in on a couple of things. On skills, just as a reminder, some of you haven't done both, so just it's your second year if you've never programmed. The driving skills and robot programming skills are combined for your total. So if you're really good at driving but you don't do any programming, your score is whatever your driving is. Let's say your high score is 20 points in driving, you get a high score of 10 in programming, you get a 30-point skill. So those two are added together. And then they take the best of your 2. So if you get programming, you do 3 tries, 5, 10, 15 is your 3 scores. And then whatever the other one was, I don't remember what I did first, was 10, 20, 30. It would be 30 plus the 15, a total of 45 points. So it doesn't hurt you to keep playing and keep driving in skills, you get a lower score. It doesn't hurt you to take the highest score. Another thing I want, and this is more of a strategy and competition that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that when you're doing, and especially on the autonomous, and we're going to go over, Paul and his son are going to go over programming all the way from downloading ModKit, all the way to installing it and showing you how to program. It's very easy. This year, I tell my first year coaches, all you have to do, thank you, is drive forward and park and you get a point. Now that we can do more than that, but you can get 1 point in programming from drive forward and park in this game because you're right in front of a spot. But it's something at the event that I don't see too often is, something I see too often that I think we need to change is that you can touch your robot during skills autonomous and bring it back to start and do a second program. So one program might be to drive over and push a hub in here. The second program might be to drive over, pick up one, and stack it. And then your third program, putting it back to start, can be drive over and hang. And those are 3 different ones that you put it back, and you can actually start on either side of the left or right.
And if you can do it in a minute, do it. And we always start with whatever we think is going to be the easiest points for programming. And halfway through the season, I tell all of my teams, you have to do this for programming. You have to at least run a program once at an event. And then I hope that it gets them to grow from there. But like George said, that's 1 point, just to drive forward and park.
To maximize your time, because it's really valuable, is the person that pushes it, the start button does not have to be the one that retrieves it. So I tell the little students, if I'm a ref, I tell them if they drive up, get that other student ready to return it, and then the next person is ready to hit the start button. So they're the gopher retriever ready to jump, grab it, put it back to start. It doesn't have to be the same person that pushed the button. And I see some like middle schoolers sometimes don't know, like, it would be cool when they walk over and grab it slowly because they don't look like they're running. But like, yes, hustle, get around there, get it over here. You don't have a lot of time to mess around. So anyway, those are two things that I know I've noticed, I think that we can improve on.
I think this is just fine. It might be the last.
Yeah,
Do we have to take off the response every time?
get to,
Take off the response?
Oh.
if you touch the robot, you're holding on to a hub, you do have to take it out. And it has to you just tell them to throw it out of bounds. Yep. It is, I don't know the ruling on this. Referees prefer that you say, can I touch the robot? Is that a rule, or is that just courteous? I don't know, you better double
As
check.
long as they put down the controller,
Rule.
right?
If they, as long as, yeah, if you're driving, you want to touch it, you gotta put the remote down. But,
Program, yeah, they should not have to ask.
get approval or
I don't
anything.
think so, because that's wasting time.
Yeah.
too. I mean,
Yeah, the ref's not paying attention, and,
Right.
yeah.
Usually what I'll tell the kids to do, in this case, if they're gonna do something like that, where their strategy is to drive over to that corner and then go grab the robot, I'll actually encourage the kids to tell the ref that that's what they're going to do in this match. So the ref, because the ref may be standing right here, watching the field, and the kid's gonna have to worry about, running into the ref. So I'll have the kids go ahead and tell the ref, we're going to grab the robot over here. Then the ref knows, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm not in the way. Again, just let the kids talk to the refs. A little bit good for them, getting them to talk to an important adult. Good thing to practice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you're doing on the skills and you've got a driver, that's their strategy, they're gonna come over and bring it back. Can another student bring it back to them? Or is that?
Yeah,
the
there's two-
strategy?
You can have two, just like regular drive skills, you can have two up there during programming, and either one of them can touch the robot.
So the driver can put it down, the other driver gets it.
Yeah,
And
but
when he
they-
puts it down, he picks up and goes.
Okay, so.
So if I'm
another
driving-
brings it back.
It's not a 30-30 split on the program.
So,
It is.
a couple
Oh,
things.
no, not on program.
In driver's skill, you can't grab the robot as part of the strategy. So, if I'm a bad driver, I drive it over there, I can't have a strategy to have my teammate go get the robot and bring it back. You can do that in programming. So, it doesn't really matter how many students are at the table during the programming run. You can have one, you can have, I think you can actually have three. You can have two. It doesn't really, I don't think it's counted at all. So, but as part of driver skill, you can't grab the robot as part of the strategy.
Right, but I meant for the program.
Yeah, for the programming, yes. Yeah, you can have somebody who's like you said, pressing the buttons and another two kids that are running.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions? It seems like we run into a problem with doing the driver skills and the autonomous. You don't have time because of the match schedule. Like, oh, you can't have a robot because we have to go queue in.
Yeah, so I mean, the best thing to do is, and if you don't do this already, is when you get your match schedule, highlight where your schedules are, find the biggest break, and sometimes eating's not an option because there's so much to do, you just gotta cram food in between the short match. But find a nice break, and then right in there, skills, like that's the objective. After this match, it's our longest 25, 30-minute break, we're going right to skills. If there's a line, that sucks. But you're just going to have to do it. You also want to keep an eye on the agenda, and they'll go over this at driver's meeting. Skills sometimes doesn't last the full day. It's only like the first 2-3 hours, or maybe it's just during lunch. So you'll have to be careful on that. I mean, event partners try their best to get it. It's just hard as an event partner to get enough volunteers to do all this. So they do try their best. But yeah, that's the only strategy that I have is looking at match schedule to do it.
Yeah, I don't run skills all day because I don't have enough fields. I don't have enough volunteers, and if I wanted to run skills, I'd also have to rent out our second gym, so it's just easier for me to have it at the start of the day, at lunch, and a little bit after.
Use the same.
So I use the same fields, but then all 4 fields can run at the same time for skills, so it goes pretty quickly.
So yeah, I think Paul at our events puts the skills in the middle of the day and does at the same time as the,
Lunch or STEM.
well, the
Yeah.
STEM and the design interviews. And so for event partners, that's kind of one idea. And he might be talking about his schedule, the way he runs his things and that kind of thing. But yes, so that the kids So all of the fields that they do the matches are running skills during that lunchtime.
Let's be honest, their kids, when they're there all day long on Saturdays, they're eating all day long. So it's not like they really need an hour or an hour and a half at lunchtime, they're eating all day long.
Is there another question really quick before I move? No? Okay, so this is the last slide, I put this in here. So this is my kind of philosophy on making sure that everyone on the team feels like they have worth, value, and contributing. Sometimes people think, well, I'm not going to the event because I'm not the driver. Well, that's baloney. Everyone on the team has a contribution in that build season at some point. Even if and I say this is important, even if their idea did not make it on the robot, they had to have contributed in some way. And I'll say sometimes you have these kids have these elaborate ideas and they never make it on the robot, but it helped your overall design. And by coming up with an elaborate idea that didn't work, that contributed in our current design. So in order to make the team feel like they are contributing in some way, these are kind of my bullet points that I think help in overall team morale, is every student, this helps with not having devices, every student is watching your matches, in the stands, watching, cheering, regardless if you got 1 point or 50 points. So they're all cheering, and that starts with the coach too. The coach needs to be off their phone, not like you guys would be, but like off your phone, and you're cheering, you're like, come on guys, yeah, they did a good job. There's not shouting instructions, that's the second driver's job. You're not yelling at what to do, as hard as that is as coaches, that's the student's job next to them on the field. They can have a better viewpoint than you can. This is something that I started doing that I liked, because sometimes you have different drivers and you got one watching a match and they're like, I do better than that. And then they're just like, I got 15 points, you only got 10, you suck. Like, no, that's not the right attitude. So what I have that all of my students do is after a match is we hustle back to the pits and we clap and high five the two drivers that just drove. And that's just kind of a fun way to be like, you know what, good job, pat them on the back. You know what, maybe we didn't have the best match, but just thank them. Thank them for doing a good job, because what you do in practice and what you do during a match is very different. There's a lot more stress involved. There's another variable, the other team. Things just don't work out your way. There's the pressure of the audience, so you need to make sure they feel supported. Always shake hands with the alliance partner, whether you like them or not. High five them or shake their hand, say good job or good luck, and the next one, that should be a must after every match. And then this is something I tell my students all the time, is that if we don't perform well, if the robot, they just had a bad match, that is in no way the driver's fault. It's the entire team fault. And it goes back to making sure that everyone contributed. So when they said they didn't stack enough on there, well, I go back to them and say, well, we didn't design a robot that was easy enough for them to stack the amount of time they had. Like, we as a team need to do a better job of designing it so it's easier for the drivers to do their job, because everyone has a role. And that goes back to the business idea of making sure that everyone has a role, and we'll talk about different responsibilities. Everyone should feel like they contributed, and so you cannot blame the driver. It's like in a football game. You can't always blame basketball, LeBron James for sucking all the time, because he's a big loser. The team sucks, and they're not helping contribute. I don't know if that's the analogy, I just want to make fun of LeBron for a second. But you can't blame the drivers all the time, because the team contributed. So if you get that mentality of we're all contributing, we're all in this together, I think that helps with the overall team morale. And it would not hurt to have more excitement in the stands and excitement in the pits and support internally in the teams.